December 23rd, 2012. A family pulls up to a house in Houston, Texas. They've been invited for dinner. They knock. No answer. They call. Nothing. Both cars are in the driveway. The garage door is wide open. They go inside. The house is dark. Every blind is shut. They call out. Silence. And then, from somewhere upstairs, a muffled voice. What they found next would change everything. Jim Melgar was born in Guatemala, but his family moved to the United States when he was just 3 years old. They settled in Houston, and that city became the only home he ever really knew. That's where he grew up, where he found his footing, and where, somewhere between classes and hallway conversations, he met a girl named Sandra. They were teenagers when they first crossed paths at school. Sandra said he was funny and charming, the kind of person who never took himself too seriously, who loved a bad joke and didn't mind if it landed flat. He had this easy, goofy energy that people were drawn to. And he was persistent. He asked her out for weeks before she finally said yes. She agreed to go ice skating with him. They both said the rest was history. They married in 1980. Jim went on to build a long, steady career as a computer programmer, spending most of it with the Houston Independent School District. Sandra built something of her own, a medical billing and coding business that she ran herself. They weren't people who chased attention or lived loudly. They had a quiet home in a quiet neighborhood, and they seemed genuinely content with the life they had made. They had one daughter, Elizabeth, who everyone called Liz. And Liz described growing up in that house as something she felt lucky for. She said the three of them were as close as a family could be. She said her parents were best friends, not just in the way people say that about couples, but in the truest sense of it. Two people who actually liked each other, who chose each other's company, who still had things to talk about after 32 years. She said they had exactly what she hoped to one day have in her own marriage. From the outside, it looked like a simple, happy life, and for a long time, in many ways, it was. But quietly, over the years, something had been making that life harder. Sandra's health had been declining, and it had reached a point where it touched almost everything. She had lupus, rheumatoid arthritis, hypothyroidism. She had undergone 2 hip replacements, and she had epilepsy. Not the kind that announces itself gently, but grand mal seizures. The kind that overtake the body completely and without warning. The kind that can leave a person unconscious on the floor, muscles seizing, with no control over what is happening to them. And when it passes, if they're lucky enough to come around, the memory of it is often just gone. Minutes, sometimes longer, simply missing. Liz said she had watched her mother go through those seizures more than once. She said it was frightening every single time, no matter how many times she had seen it. Jim had responded to all of it the way he seemed to respond to most things, quietly and without complaint. He spent hours researching Sandra's conditions. He looked into treatments, sought out specialists, read everything he could find that might point towards something that would help her. A close friend of theirs said there were stretches of time where Sandra simply didn't feel safe getting behind the wheel of a car because she never knew when a seizure might come on. She had come to depend on Jim for things most people handle without thinking. He had become, in every real and practical sense, her primary caregiver. And he was 5 months away from retirement. They had plans, a whole list of things they had been putting off. Places to see, trips to take, time to finally spend the way they wanted. December 22nd, 2012. It was their 32nd wedding anniversary, and they had decided to celebrate. They went out to their favorite Mexican restaurant, a place they knew well, a place that felt like theirs. Nothing elaborate, just the two of them, a good meal, and the kind of easy conversation that only comes after 3 decades with the same person. Jim's family were coming over the following evening for a small dinner, a chance to mark the anniversary together and catch up before Christmas. There was something to look forward to. The house would be full again. On the drive home, Sandra noticed a car behind them. It had been there for a while, staying closer than felt normal. She mentioned it to Jim. He did what Jim tended to do. He slowed down a little, trying to create some distance. She didn't like that. She told him it was dangerous to slow down for someone tailgating you. But then, as they turned into their neighborhood, the car turned left. They turned right. It was probably nothing. Just another car on a Houston street at night. They let it go. Back home, they made drinks and settled into the jacuzzi in their bathroom. It was something they liked to do. The house was quiet, the dogs were settled, and for a little while they just talked. About the future. About whether to sell the house once Jim retired. About all the places they had been meaning to go. Jim was 5 months away from finishing his last working day, and he had already started filling his retirement in his head. Sandra was looking forward to it. It was, by every measure, a normal evening. And then the dogs started barking. They had 4 of them, and when they got going, the neighbors could hear it. Jim got up to go sort it out. Sandra stayed in the jacuzzi. She could hear him moving around. After a few minutes, the barking settled, but Jim hadn't come back. She waited. 10 minutes, maybe 15. The house was quiet now. She figured he had gotten distracted, or maybe taken the dogs to another room so they wouldn't start up again. She climbed out of the jacuzzi, wrapped up, and walked through the bedroom toward her closet to get changed for bed. She reached for the light, started to get undressed, and after that, nothing. The morning of December 23rd came and went. A neighbor noticed early on that the garage door at the Melgar house was open. He thought it was odd. It wasn't something they usually left that way, but he didn't think too much of it. Hours passed. The door stayed open. Nobody came out. Nobody went in. The driveway sat still and quiet the whole day. By 4:30 in the afternoon, Jim's family had arrived for dinner. His brother Herman knocked on the front door. Nothing. He tried calling. No answer. He looked around. Jim's black truck was sitting in the driveway. Through the open garage, he could see Sandra's silver car parked inside. Both of them right there. He knocked again. Silence. Herman went around through the garage and found an interior door unlocked. He let the rest of the family in through the front. They stepped inside and called out. Jim. Sandra. Their voices fell flat in the darkness. Every blind in the house was drawn shut. The air felt thick and stale, like the place had been closed off for a long time. The dogs started barking somewhere inside, and Herman's daughter turned to her father and said quietly, "Something doesn't feel right." They moved through the house carefully, calling as they went. And then Herman heard it. A voice. Faint, muffled, coming from somewhere upstairs. He ran up through the master bedroom and into the bathroom. There, next to the jacuzzi, was a small walk-in closet. A chair had been propped underneath the door handle from the outside. He moved the chair, opened the door. Sandra was on the floor. Her arms and legs were bound behind her back with scarves, the knots pulled so tight that Herman couldn't work them loose with his hands. He had to run for scissors to cut her free. She was disoriented, barely able to speak. Her clothes were soiled from what had clearly been many hours on that floor. And about 30 feet away, through the master bedroom, in a separate closet, Herman found his brother. Jim Melgar was naked. He had been beaten. He had been stabbed 31 times. Blood covered the walls, the carpet, his black briefcase that sat beside him. His legs were bound. A rope was loosely wrapped around his chest. He had more than 50 individual injuries across his body, defensive wounds concentrated on his hands and arms, the marks of someone who had fought back, hard, and for a long time. Authorities arrived within minutes. At 4:52 in the afternoon, Jim Melgar was pronounced dead. He was 52 years old.
West Harris County neighborhood on edge this Christmas Eve. A couple celebrating a wedding anniversary found tied up in separate closets. The husband had been stabbed to death. Tonight, investigators have plenty of questions about this. And it happened, as we see on this map, at a home on Kelsey Meadows Court and Village Terrace. And that's where Local 2's Andy Sirota is joining us live with the latest on this story. Andy?
Bill, residents in this quiet community still baffled over a bizarre mystery involving two of their neighbors. Like police, they too have so many questions.
We're just trying to get a statement.
Sandra Melgar sought comfort today in the arms of a friend in the wake of her husband's bizarre murder. She was unable to speak from the back seat of this car where we saw her wrapped in a blanket laying down, still in shock after her 52-year-old husband was found dead and tied up in a closet. Relatives who arrived at the couple's home for Sunday dinner also found Sandra Melgar tied up in a separate closet.
32 years was the anniversary. They were celebrating it.
Distraught family members tell Local 2 the couple had been happily married for 32 years and recently celebrated their anniversary. Deputies say Melgar told them she can't remember who tied her up or who may have hurt her husband. His brother told us he'd been stabbed to death.
They were in the bathroom together, her and her husband, at approximately 1 a.m. this morning, and at some time she blacked out, and the next thing she remembers is waking up in the closet.
Relatives told us off camera the Melgars are devout Jehovah's Witnesses, own some rental properties, and insist there was nothing going on in the couple's lives to indicate trouble was on the horizon. Now, tonight, we're still not sure what caused Sandra Melgar to black out, but relatives tell us she does have a medical condition, and they say it appears that she may have been hit over the head with something. Investigators haven't released information on any possible suspects. They took Sandra Melgar to homicide headquarters to interview her.
Andy, thank you, sir. Relatives got to the Melgar house yesterday. They said they noticed that the garage door was open. Investigators haven't said anything yet about any possible signs of forced entry or about whether the couple's home had possibly.
When Sandra was finally freed and the paramedics reached her, she was barely tracking what was happening around her. Through tears, she told them the last thing she remembered was being in her closet, starting to get changed, sometime around 1 in the morning. She had no idea that an entire day had passed. She said her body felt the way it always did after a seizure, every muscle aching, her head pounding, no sense of how much time had gone. And then someone told her about Jim. Sandra was taken from the scene to the Harris County Sheriff's Office for questioning, not to the hospital, to the interrogation room. She was still in shock, still trying to process what she had just been told about her husband. And investigators were already asking questions. Because from very early on, something about the scene had unsettled them.
I need to do a statement from you, okay? That's why we're here. And I have a little recorder and do a little statement and get some questions from you. Answer.
And did you immediately get into the jacuzzi at that time when you got home?
We made drinks and went straight to the jacuzzi. He got out once to go get ice and then came back and then said he was going to move the dogs because they were barking too much. He got out and said he was moving the dogs to the office because when they're too loud, we don't want the neighbors to complain. It was taking a while, so I got out and was going to get dressed for a change in my closet. And I went in there and I started to change. And that's all I remember until I woke up. And then I remember I woke up and I But I had a seizure because my muscles hurt and my head was just hurting real bad. Several hours later, I woke up and realized I was tied up. That's all I remember. That's it. I mean, I would tell you more if I remembered more. I just don't.
So the
Turn it on.
jacuzzi was making noise. It was pretty loud.
Mm-hmm.
And you couldn't hear anything over that.
I didn't hear anything.
Hear anybody scream?
No.
Hear the dogs? Well, you could hear the dogs bark.
Yeah, because they were right outside our window.
So did he have to go outside to get them?
I don't think so. Usually he just calls them and they come.
They come in the doggy door?
Yeah.
So you don't have to open the door?
Sometimes, yeah. Because some of the little ones don't want to come in. They're not.
If he opened the door last night, you would have heard that, right?
I don't think so. The front? No, you mean the back door.
When they moved through the house, the dresser drawers had been pulled open carefully, not thrown across the room the way they tend to be when someone is frantically searching for valuables. The murder weapon, a kitchen knife from inside the Melgar home, had been left submerged in the jacuzzi. There were no signs of forced entry on any of the windows or doors.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and a couple of your neighbors had video cameras and wanted to get your house pretty well. Okay, your front door was locked, your back door was locked. Nobody came in through the garage. Okay, we work hundreds and hundreds of murders. Sometimes we work cold-blooded killers that just on the street that would just kill somebody for nothing. Then sometimes we work murders that they're in an argument and something happens. Okay, there's two different types of people. If you argue with somebody and you lose it, your temper and an argument happens.
That's not what happened. That's not what happened. And I think I'm going to stop talking now because I think I'm going to need a lawyer because I know how this works. I hurt all over and my head hurts.
How often do you have seizures like that?
I'm not able to drive anymore.
How frequent?
At least once a month, maybe.
When was the last time you had one of those before today?
Jim's loaded gun was found untouched in the closet where his body lay, inches from where he died. Then there was Sandra herself. She had no blood on her body at all. For a woman who, if investigators were right, had inflicted more than 50 injuries on a man who fought back hard enough to cover his own hands and arms in defensive wounds, she was completely unmarked. Her hands were clean, her nails unbroken. Her ligature marks were also minimal, considering she claimed to have been bound for close to 15 hours.
I think when we left CVS, there was a car following us because when we came in our neighborhood, it was still behind us, and he was really close. And my husband, I'd get upset with him because he would drive slower when someone was tailgating him, and I'd tell him, don't do that because, it's dangerous. But the guy turned left, and we turned right, and so we thought it was just a coincidence. And I keep trying to remember.
Y'all had no disagreements
No,
at
we got
all.
along very well.
You ever have any fights?
Usually they were because of my daughter, but she's been gone for 5 years now, so no.
Part of our job is what we do is we gather witness statements, okay? We also search for video cameras, okay? And a couple of your neighbors had video cameras and wanted to get your house pretty well, okay? Your front door was locked, your back door was locked. Nobody came in through the garage, okay? We work hundreds and hundreds of murders. Sometimes we work cold-blooded killers that just on the street that would just kill somebody for nothing. Then sometimes we work murders that they're in an argument and something happens. Okay, there's two different types.
Jim's bindings told a similar story. The marks on his body were faint enough that experts said it was more consistent with him having been tied after death rather than before.
Trouble will cause you pain. But we have a procedure. Are you familiar with a polygraph exam? We have a person that's going to come here. He's probably here now.
I can't do it now. I'm just a nervous wreck right now.
Okay, well, let me explain.
Let me
explain this.
And I'd rather talk to a lawyer about it because I already feel like, I know where this is going.
Okay, well, I want you to understand. Now, I understand that you're upset. I understand that you've been through a lot. This person that does this is a professional and is able to filter for that. And I want you to meet with him and talk to him, no matter if you take the exam or not. We're not trying to pin something on you. We're not trying to get you to say that you've done something that you haven't done. I'm asking you to also, try to dig deep. I understand that you said that you were struck and that you went unconscious. I understand that. But I'm asking you to really dig deep because, you were there.
I don't think I went unconscious.
Okay.
I mean, I think having a seizure is different from going, it's the same.
I understand.
It's the same.
You said that when you've had those experiences that you forget things, and we understand that. But, and I'm not a doctor, but I'm asking you, of course, for you and for us, for your husband's sake, if you can dig down and try to remember anything. How you feeling?
Freezing.
How did the meeting go?
Guess okay.
Did you take the polygraph?
No.
How come?
I needed to wait because I'm just too shaky right now.
Something I want you to understand is that we go to all extremes. We don't quit. You're going to see a lot of me. You're going to see a lot of my partner. We're going to learn everything.
But I hope you're looking somewhere else too, because it's not me.
We're processing this. You're seeing your house too. And we didn't just walk into this ball game yesterday. I did ask you to take a polygraph test.
Yes.
I did.
And I'm too shaken and I'm freezing. And
what's your explanation though? What's your excuse for not taking one? It's not holding water, Sandra. I'm just going to be honest with you.
I just don't want to take it and then it's used against me.
That's not possible.
Yeah, it is. It is.
Those are not even admissible in court.
What do you think should happen to the person that, if we catch that did this to your husband, what do you think his punishment or her punishment should be? Do you think they should get a second chance?
No.
What do you think should happen to him or her?
They should go to prison. Isn't that what they normally do? They go to prison.
Do you love your husband?
Yes, I love my husband.
Do you care about him?
Yes.
Do you want us to finally kill him?
Of course.
I don't think you do.
Did you kill your husband?
No, I didn't.
A neighbour had been working in his open garage until 1 a.m. and heard nothing from the direction of the Melgar house. Sandra declined a voluntary polygraph. She said she was shaking and afraid her physical condition would affect the result, regardless of what she said. Investigators noted it. Within 2 hours of arriving at the scene, before the house had been fully processed, before any evidence had come back from testing, they contacted the Harris County District Attorney's Office and requested to file murder charges against Sandra Melgar. The DA refused, insufficient evidence. But as the investigation continued, other details began to surface that pointed in a different direction. The garage door had been open all day, and the interior door connecting the garage to the house was not properly secured. It had been broken before the murder. Anyone who tried that handle could have walked straight in without leaving any sign of forced entry. DNA belonging to nobody in the Melgar family was found on door handles, dresser drawers, and the scarves used to bind Sandra. Blood recovered from the handle of Jim's safe, which was still locked when police arrived, came back as an unidentified male with no connection to the family. It was never explained. A backpack containing a gaming console was found in the garage, belonging to no one in the family, with unknown female DNA on it. Sandra and her daughter Liz both said prescription medications and a bedroom television were missing from the house. None of it appeared in the official police reports as stolen. And there was one question the defense kept coming back to. If Sandra had stabbed her husband 31 times, bludgeoned him, staged the entire scene, and then bound herself and locked herself in a closet, where was the blood? There was no evidence of any cleanup anywhere in that house. No bleach, no disturbed drain. Nothing to suggest anyone had tried to remove physical evidence. Sandra's hands were clean and every surface around her was undisturbed. The prosecution's position was that she had cleaned it all up. The Innocence Project of Texas, who would later take on Sandra's case, responded to that plainly. Their director said it defied the laws of gravity, much less the laws of logic and common sense. While investigators were building their case against Sandra, there were things happening around the edges of this investigation that never received the attention they deserved. On the night of the murder, a local news crew working the scene noticed a man behaving strangely in the neighborhood. His name was Chad Sullivan. He was a convicted thief who had recently been released from prison on assault charges. Police knocked on his door twice. They left a card asking him to get in touch. He never responded, never opened the door, and the investigation into Chad Sullivan ended there. He was never formally questioned. He was never eliminated as a suspect. Around the same period, a nearly identical home invasion had occurred in a nearby area. Same general method of operation, same type of scene. Nobody ever investigated whether the two cases were connected. These were not small oversights, but they become harder to ignore when you look at how the lead investigation itself was being run. The detective who built the case against Sandra was later forced to resign from the Harris County Sheriff's Office. The reason had nothing to do with the Melgar case. He had been caught backdating a search warrant in a separate murder investigation. That is a serious breach of the kind of integrity that an investigation depends on entirely. And when you place that fact alongside the timeline of what happened here, an arrest warrant requested within 2 hours of arriving at the scene, before the house had been properly processed, before a single piece of evidence had been tested. It raises uncomfortable questions about how this case was handled from the very beginning. Then there was the blood on Jim's safe. The safe was still locked when police arrived. Nobody had opened it. And yet blood recovered from its handle came back as belonging to an unidentified male with no familial connection to the Melgar family. Not Jim. Not anyone related to the family in any way. It has never been matched to anyone, and no explanation for how it got there has ever been offered. At trial, the prosecution needed to answer one specific physical question. How could Sandra have locked herself inside that closet from the inside? Their answer was a courtroom demonstration. They proposed that she had used a torn pillow sham, sliding it under the door to drag the chair against the handle and pull it shut behind her. But the demonstration had problems. Sandra's forearms and wrists had both been bound. The demo only restrained the wrists. A different material was used in place of what was actually found at the scene. No torn pillow sham was ever recovered from inside or anywhere near that closet. And witnesses noted that the back legs of the chair had been resting flat on the floor, which was inconsistent with the chair having been dragged and wedged the way the prosecution described. Each of these details, taken alone, might be explainable, but taken together, they form a pattern of an investigation that moved too fast, looked too narrowly, and left too many things unexamined. It took nearly 5 years from the night Jim died to the moment Sandra stood in a courtroom and heard a jury's verdict. She had been indicted in the summer of 2014, a year and a half after the murder. Her trial didn't begin until August 2017, and by then the case had passed through 4 different prosecutors in the district attorney's office. 3 weeks of testimony, dozens of witnesses, and at the center of it all, a woman who had maintained the same story from the very first night, that she had no memory of what happened, that someone had been in that house, and that she had not killed her husband. The prosecution put forward 2 theories of motive. The first was that Sandra had been unhappy in the marriage and, as a committed Jehovah's Witness, felt she couldn't seek a divorce without serious social consequences. No witness came forward to say the Melgars had any marital difficulties. The second was the life insurance policy. Jim had one worth $250,000, and Sandra stood to benefit. It was possible, the prosecution said. But possible was the strongest word they could use, because nothing more concrete was ever established. Their theory of the crime was that Sandra had seduced Jim, stabbed and bludgeoned him in the bedroom closet, spent time arranging the scene to suggest a home invasion had taken place, and then used a torn pillow sham to drag a chair against the closet door from the inside, effectively locking herself in to wait for the family she knew was coming for dinner the following day.
Against a woman accused of murdering her husband and then trying to cover it up. Channel 2's Lee Ferlisi is joining us live downtown with what we're learning from the courtroom as we wait for a verdict in this case. Lee?
Yes, Bill. Well, the prosecutor arguing very strongly that Sandra Melgar did murder her husband. The defense saying there was shoddy detective work and the evidence just does not add up. Now it's up to the jury. Sandra Melgar's fate lies in their hands.
Thank you.
Closing arguments began this afternoon.
You guys saw the photos. You saw all the wounds that he had, the 13 stab wounds, all the other wounds that he had in his body and his head. Certainly that person intended to kill him, or that person certainly intended to cause serious bodily injury, which resulted in death. We've proven all of those things.
In the Sandra Melgar case,
there's no physical evidence in this case that points to her at all.
The prosecution graphically painting a picture from their case.
And while he isn't looking, she makes a strike straight up all the way to his neck. That's what that first strike is. Jamie, of course, gets up to try and defend himself, turns around, and that's when she gets him on the thumb. And that's when the blood starts spurting out onto the chair.
The defense criticizing shoddy detective work and saying the evidence is just not there.
Look at what remains. No broken nails, no problems with the hands, no bruising here where you would expect it if a knife was used.
So the jury is expected to deliberate for only a few more minutes until about 5:15, then they'll be back at it again.
The defense's position was straightforward. There was no physical evidence connecting Sandra to the crime, no blood on her body, no evidence of a cleanup, no motive that anyone who actually knew this couple could confirm. They pointed to Sandra's physical condition, a woman with 2 hip replacements, lupus, vascular disease, and arthritis, and asked the jury to consider whether she was physically capable of overpowering a man whose defensive wounds showed he had fought back with everything he had. They pointed to the unidentified DNA found throughout the house. They pointed to the problems with the courtroom demonstration. And they pointed to the lead investigator's later resignation for misconduct in another case. The jury deliberated for 8 hours, spread across 2 days. On the first day, they were split evenly down the middle. The jury foreman spoke about it afterward. He said the case was the last thing on his mind when he went to sleep, and the first thing when he woke up. He said when he first saw Sandra, this small, unwell, quietly spoken woman, he genuinely couldn't picture how she could have done it. He said his sense of her guilt or innocence swung back and forth throughout the entire trial. What finally moved the jury, he said, was the prosecution's argument laid out in full. Not because it was proven beyond doubt, but because to them, in the end, it was the only version of events that seemed to hold together. On the second day, they returned a unanimous verdict. Guilty. 27 years in prison. An audible gasp went through the courtroom. Sandra's legs buckled. She was sobbing before they reached her. Liz said that even after everything, even after 3 weeks of sitting through that trial, nobody in that room had actually believed it would end this way. Before they took her mother away, Liz got one last hug. Sandra's conviction did not end the debate. If anything, it intensified it. In December 2018, Kathleen Zellner announced she was joining Sandra's legal team. Zellner is one of the most recognized wrongful conviction attorneys in the United States. She gained widespread attention through the Netflix series Making a Murderer for her work on Stephen Avery's case. And over her career, she has exonerated 19 people who had been wrongfully convicted. She began conducting independent DNA testing on evidence from the case. She stated publicly that she believed Sandra was innocent and that the testing would ultimately prove it. Sandra's attorneys filed a petition for review with the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals. That court accepts fewer than 10% of the petitions brought before it. They agreed to take the case. It was a significant development, not a guarantee of anything, but a signal that the questions surrounding this conviction were serious enough to warrant the attention of the highest criminal court in the state. After reviewing the record, the court ultimately upheld the conviction, but the fact that they had agreed to look at it at all was not lost on Sandra's family or her legal team. In December 2022, the Innocence Project of Texas formally announced they were taking on Sandra's case. The organization had, since its founding, helped free or exonerate 27 people. Their executive director reviewed the facts and was direct about his assessment. He said the state's theory required Sandra to have committed a brutal and sustained attack, staged an elaborate scene, and eliminated every trace of physical evidence, all while leaving herself completely unmarked. He said that simply did not hold together under any rational examination of the evidence. They began meeting with the Harris County District Attorney's Office and reviewing the full case file. It was the kind of process that could take years. But for Liz, who had spent every year since her father's death fighting to bring her mother home, it felt like the fight had been renewed.
They got it completely wrong.
Sandra, did you kill your husband?
No, I did not kill my husband. No.
And you have grandkids.
And my grandbabies, yeah.
You're missing out on.
I know. I know that really hurts me. I miss them so much. I mean, I'm just going to keep fighting this until I'm out of here.
In December 2024, the family announced a $100,000 reward for any information leading to the identification of Jim Melgar's killer. As of today, that reward has not been claimed. Sandra is being held at a medical facility in Dickinson, Texas. She is eligible for parole in February 2031. If that is denied, her release date is August 2044. She will be 85 years old. She has said the same thing every time anyone has asked her. She did not kill her husband. She does not know who did. And she is going to keep fighting until she is out of that prison. Thank you for watching. If you want to support the channel, consider subscribing and joining our community.